So, episode 8 of Becoming Elizabeth, this is the season finale. So, we left off where Edward was coughing up blood. Some time has passed, and now he is ill. He is in bed, and word has gotten around the court that he is not doing well. Um, so, John, Lord Protector, knows that he's burned some bridges. He always felt safe because he had the ear of the king, but now realizing that the king is ill and could possibly die. I mean, he's a young boy, but back then people died at young ages all the time. He's realizing that he may be in trouble because if Edward dies, there goes his power. Not only his power, but his enemies will come back to him. So now he's starting to scramble. He has somebody send a letter to Mary because Mary is the latest person he pissed off. You remember in the last episode, they had a confrontation at the church when he was burning the property of the church in front of her, and when he threw Bishop Gardner down the steps and had him imprisoned. So Mary is not a fan, and he knows this, and he knows that she is next in line of succession should Edward die. So he starts scrambling. He realizes he has to clean up his mess. We see Mary, she decided not to leave and to go to Spain, and we see her in the town, and the people love her. You can hear her coming. She has her entourage. The people are yelling for her. She's always been a fan favorite in England, just like her mother. So she definitely has the support of the people, and this is just more confirmation for John Dudley that he messed up by pissing her off. So she comes to Whitehall Palace to see her brother. She sees John, and his whole tone has changed. He runs down the stairs to greet her. It's quite obvious what he's doing. She knows what he's doing. She tells him 3 things that he can do for her. Number 1, he needs to release the bishop from the tower. He needs to leave her alone when she holds a Catholic service to pray for her brother's health. And thirdly, he needs to get the fuck out of her way. Loved this scene. It was good to see Mary wield her power and to get such quick retribution against John Dudley for what he had done to her last week. So this was a good moment. I enjoy this. She goes to see her brother. He is, he's ill. He looks like he's on his deathbed. They have a moment. They both start crying. And he asks her to renounce her faith. He doesn't want all of his work undone. He has been working for Reformation to turn the country from Catholic to Protestant. And he's afraid that all the work he's done will become undone when he dies, which is quite possible because we know that when power shifts from monarch to monarch, with it comes their religious beliefs, and everybody has to fall in line. I mean, that's what happened, or just when they changed their mind, just like Henry VIII did, when he decided that he was in love with Anne Boleyn and he no longer wanted to be married to Catherine of Aragon. He made that separation from the Pope and created the Church of England and made himself the head of that. So that was a huge rift in English history. And so these things can change. We know that. Edward is also probably realizing that that would have been his legacy. He's young. He's only been on the throne for a couple of years. To this point, what else has he done? He hasn't had any successes. And a lot of monarchs did want to have something. I mean, I guess just like any leader, they want to have some kind of legacy they leave behind. And I imagine he thought that that was going to be it. And now he's realizing it's going to fall apart. If his sister does ascend to the throne, Catholicism is going to be reinstalled and all of his work will be for naught. What I love about Mary is that she's always honest. If she perceives he's on his deathbed, there's a lot of things she could have said just to make him feel better, to soothe him. But, she says, don't ask me to do that. I mean, that's one thing about Mary. She is very consistent. Her faith means everything to her. And regardless of how she may be punished or what the consequences are, she's always going to stay true to her religion and her God. Elizabeth and Mary's talk. Now, the last interaction between the two of them was when Mary had asked Elizabeth to speak to Edward on her behalf about forcing her to marry a Protestant. Elizabeth refused, saying that, it was a done deal. There was nothing she could do. And Mary was pissed with her. And to punish her, she sent a letter to the King of Austria telling him that Elizabeth was a bastard, that she was not, in fact, Henry's daughter. And that's what made him decide to revoke the invitation or revoke the introduction between his son and Elizabeth. Mary apologizes. She starts off pretty strong, but quickly she turns and tells her sister that she's sorry, that she was just angry. She didn't mean it. I love the relationship between the two of them. I've said it before, they have so many reasons to be at odds. I mean, given their upbringing, their mothers were at odds. These two were polarized in so many ways, through the line of succession, um, who was deemed a legitimate heir or a legitimate child of King Henry VIII, through religion, power. I mean, they have so many reasons to not have this bond, this sister bond that they do, but they still do. So even when they argue and they have disagreements, they always seem to come back together again, which is endearing. And it's important because in actuality, they're all they really have. This is a dog eat dog world. Everybody's an opportunist. Everybody's out there volleying for power. These two young women, because of who they are, there is a perceived level of power that they hold. Therefore, people will try to align themselves with them and use them. So they have to stick with each other because really they have nothing else. And I think they realize that on some level, which is why even after they have disagreements, they seem to always resolve those. So this is the part where we start to see all of the scheming and all of the moving behind the scenes. Because if Edward is to die, we know he has no issue. He has no heirs. It's going to go to Henry's two other children, who are Mary and Elizabeth, and it will go to Mary first because she's the elder. So we have these two different camps, and people are realizing, okay, which team do I want to be on? Where do I have a better chance for success? Where are my odds better? So Elizabeth and John have a conversation, and John is frustrated and he's nervous because he sees where, this is all starting to unravel for him. He recognizes that Elizabeth has some value. If in his thoughts, he's thinking, if I could get her onto the throne, if I get into her good graces, and then I can also get her onto the throne, I'm safe. And while he's talking to Elizabeth, he seems like he's just musing, just kind of thinking out loud. But I think it's much more strategic than that. He's trying to get into her head. And he does this by telling her that, because she's sitting at the head of the council table when he walks into the room. And he says, well, you could actually sit there. He's putting the bug in her ear that, you could be queen. And, stranger things have happened. And I've been around for a long time. I was a right-hand man of your father, and I moved, mountains in order for him to have what he wanted. And I would do that again, and I would do it for you. And it works because, again, she's young, she's impressionable. She also, while she's seen a lot, she doesn't have the perspective that he does because she was a little girl when all of this was going on. And to hear this man who does have power and knowledge tell her that it's possible, it makes her think it's possible. And, she entertains the thought, why wouldn't she? At the same time, we see another strategic thing going on. Mary and Lord Somerset. Now, the two of them had been at odds before, but I do believe that she did have respect for him. Early on when he was the Lord Protector, he released Bishop Gardiner from the Tower of London as a gesture for Mary. Now, it wasn't entirely just to make Mary happy. He also was trying to keep all of these uprisings down. And he thought if he could do that, it could keep Mary happy. And if Mary was happy, then, she wouldn't rally for her support for all of the other Catholics in England and abroad. There was a reason for that, but they also seem to have had a healthy respect for each other, even if they didn't always agree how to manage the crown or how to manage Edward. So they make amends, and they make an agreement that, they're in partners with this together. He realizes he's lost a lot of his power once he was usurped by John Dudley. And, Mary is next in line. And if he could get on her good side, this would be good for him. They also agree at this time that they recognize, I should say, that there will be some hurdles here, right? They realize that, John Dudley doesn't want to lose his power, so he's probably they don't know exactly what he's doing, but they know he would be smart to start scrambling and start working some things up behind the scenes. And they also recognize that Elizabeth might be a threat as well because she is the next heir. So they decide that they will each take one, right? So Lord Somerset will handle John Dudley and Mary will handle Elizabeth. Now, Mary's handling of Elizabeth is showing up in her room while Elizabeth is sleeping and inviting her to go out on a ride, which they do. She pulls some kind of move where Elizabeth gets thrown from her horse. And then so Elizabeth starts to see what this is. Like, are you trying to kill me? Like, what's going on here? And Mary tells her, just kind of reminding her just how conniving and manipulative all these people are. And people will come to you as if they're your friend, but really they're trying to use you. Just beware, which is the same thing she's kind of been telling Elizabeth from the beginning. And she lets her know, this is going to happen. I'm going to be next. And all you need to do is just go along with things. I think it was an olive branch to say, I don't want any trouble with you. If you would just not cause any issues, everything will be fine. Elizabeth receives this. And I think and I'm not sure if it was her intent to keep peace with her sister or just the acknowledgement of what Mary told her, that men will come to her scheming and John just came to her scheming. But she has a change of heart in that she tells John Dudley that yes, she would like to be queen. He gets excited because he's thinking like, yeah, now we can get to making some power moves now that I have her on my side. But she throws a monkey wrench in his plans because she tells him essentially she wants to be queen, but she's not going to do anything to become queen. Like, she's not going to cause any trouble. She's not going to ruffle any feathers. And it's disappointing for John because he was prepared to do that because he knew in order to push her past Mary, they would have to ruffle some feathers. And knowing that Elizabeth is not up for that was disappointing for him. She tells him, I like you. I've always liked you. I respect you, but I'm just not going to do that. And, he tries to pit her against her sister. And she tells him, my sister's a lot of things, but paranoid she is not. There are a lot of men in the court right now scheming against her. It's a true thing. And you're one of them. So, he leaves with his tail between his legs because he's disappointed, realizing that now his plan has been thwarted and now he has to figure out a plan B. So John Dudley is understandably stressed out. He has a conversation with his son, Robert, who I failed to mention this in my last review, but he and Robert had a falling out because once Robert realized that they were trying to marry Elizabeth off to the Danish prince, he had a bright idea. He said, I love her. She loves me. This could solve a lot of problems. I think he's always loved her, had affection for her. But I think once he heard that they were actively looking for a partner for her, he realized, like, I need to move quickly if I want to make something of this. This might be my only opportunity. And he had asked his father if he could marry her. His father had a huge reaction to this. He actually punched him in the face, was like, you out of your mind. We need to marry her off because we need alliances. You're not going to mess this up. And I mean, he made it very clear that this has nothing to do with your feelings for her or even for her. Like, her marriage, her life is a matter of state right now. And I'm not going to allow you to ruin this moment just because you like her. After that altercation, Robert had left the court and he had been gone for about 2 months, to the point nobody even knew where he was. And he eventually returned. He has a conversation with his father, and now things are different because now, the Prince Christian is no longer interested. Now Edward is sick. So John Dudley's singing a different tune now. And now he realizes, maybe I should marry my son off to Elizabeth, because this will save me. He knows that he's pissed Mary off, and he knows that when she gets on that throne, she likely will execute him. And in talking to his son, I was a little on the fence here. I didn't know if he was really trying to protect his own ass or protecting his family. I mean, he said, I'm probably going to get executed one way or the other, but if you get married to Elizabeth, maybe this will save you. So he says that this would be a strategic move to save his family. That it's too late for him, but at least he could save his family. But I'm thinking it's bigger than that. Of course, he doesn't want anything to happen to his family, but I think he's trying to save his own ass here. But it's too late because while Robert was away, he got married. Remember, Elizabeth had told him that she didn't love him. She had turned him down. He fled court and he married a young woman, Amy somebody, that he had met when he went up north with his father to push back the rebellion. They had stayed at this young woman's house and they, got to liking each other. And I guess he went to her when he was heartbroken after the whole situation with Elizabeth, and the two of them got married. John learns this, and again, another disappointment because, all of his plans are just kind of falling apart right in front of him. He also has a conversation with Lord Somerset in which Lord Somerset tells him this is going to happen. Where Mary is going to be on a throne. Like it's written already. Don't try to fight it. I will do my best. I can't make Mary forgive you for what you did, but I may be able to make her forget. So he's also extending an olive branch, telling him if you would just don't fight it, I will do what I can to keep you safe from her. Just don't be a problem. But John is not going for that. There's still a lot of tension between these two. They were once friends, but once that whole situation happened, when John took over the role of Lord Protector, Lord Somerset has never forgiven him for that. And he can't find it in him to make nice. Especially not now where he feels like he might still have some cards to play. He's not going to give up his power that easily. And he also just may not trust that, he doesn't trust that Lord Somerset will in fact try to protect him from Mary. And he doesn't know that even if he tries, that Mary will go for that. So, he's floundering right now. He's really just trying to keep his head above water any way he can. And he's very distrustful, but it's understandable given all the things that he's seen and given some of the things that he's actually done. So the culmination of all of this backroom talk and all this scheming and planning is a meeting of the council. Mary calls a meeting to discuss the succession. Now, this is illegal. And the reason it's illegal is because to talk of a king's death is a crime. It's considered treason. So, obviously it makes logical sense. If somebody is dying, it's logical to speak about what do we do next without wishing death upon the person. But, at the time, it was considered treason. So, the fact that they're having these conversations is problematic, and we'll see how that plays out a little bit later at the end of the episode. But Mary calls a meeting. All the players are there. It is John Dudley, Lord Somerset, Elizabeth, Henry Francis, and Bishop Gardiner, I believe. All the folks are there. And this is where Mary pumps her chest. At this point, she's feeling pretty confident that Edward is going to pass and that she will be the queen. And this is her opportunity to, to stop the Reformation, to reinstate Catholicism as the religion of England, to put her enemies in their place, namely John Dudley, and to have power. Now she doesn't have to sit in this space of, am I going to get married off? Can I pray in public? All of these things that have been going on. And Mary has had a really rough life, being his first daughter and living through all of the craziness of the Tudor dynasty. I think for her, this was a moment where she could exhale because now she was going to be in charge and she was not beholden to anybody. Before, she was just subject, to the wind, whichever way the wind blew, and her life would just change. But now I think she's feeling like she has been faithful, she has prayed, she's been resilient, and this is her reward. So now John, in this meeting is realizing the walls are closing in on him. He doesn't have any friends in this room. Elizabeth might be his last chance, but when they ask her, she reiterates that, my father had a will and it should be followed. And according to the will, it was John, Mary, and then Elizabeth. John is pissed. Lord Somerset calls for John Dudley's arrest. This is his chance to get him back. He's about to send him to the Tower. The guards come around him and they're like grabbing him by each arm, ready to take him and haul him out of the room. And just at that moment, Robert Dudley bursts into the room and says, "Dad, he's asking for you." King Edward is awake and he's lucid. This is really good news for John. John goes running to Edward's chambers and he's there. He's standing up. He's out of bed. He looks so much better. And he tells him that the fever broke. John hugs him, and the relief, he is just like, he was saved literally by the skin of his teeth. Had Edward woken up a half an hour later, he might have already been in the tower. He realized how close he was to the edge. This was a very sobering moment for him. It also was very sobering for Lord Somerset, Mary, and Elizabeth, because they all but had Edward in the grave. And again, like I said, even talking about this is illegal. So now that he's awake and he's alive and, he may be well, he may have recovered, they know that they're going to have to deal with the consequences of this. The power has now swung back to John. Mary, you could see the look on her face like, damn, we done messed up here. She exits the room with the tail between her legs. And, she realizes that she and Elizabeth are just going to have to sit and wait and see what happens to them. John takes no time in asking the king to send Lord Somerset to the tower. He snitches. He tells him they were all plotting and scheming behind your back. He was too, but of course, he realizes that he has to get rid of Somerset because he's in fact a true enemy. It's past just bad blood between friends. He was going to have his head. So he realizes, I have to do this and I have to do it fast. So he presses Edward to have him executed the next day, and Edward agrees to it, and he's executed. It was very sad. The executions then were public, and you can kind of get the sense of who the person was for the most part in how the crowd reacts before the execution. The folks who truly were victims of the court, who were falsely accused, who were killed just because they stood their ground or they committed to their faith. Those folks, people love them. And the reaction there is very much this sadness. And, a lot of people are, sharing their blessings and praying for the soul of the person who's about to be executed. And on the flip side, when you have somebody who is deemed evil, who really has done some terrible things, who the people were not a fan of, they're there just yelling and screaming and throwing things, and they're there for the entertainment's sake. So in this instance, we saw that there were a lot of people there who did care, or who thought well of Somerset, because it was a very supportive crowd. His son was there. It was very sad to see. And it's just unfortunate. I said in the very beginning, while I didn't always agree with his ways, I did think that he wanted the best thing for the country. I think he had good intentions. And even in his dealings with his brother, his brother was his Achilles heel. He probably was managing his brother's crap, Thomas's crap, for his entire life. And part of the reason that he lost his role as the Lord Protector is because of Thomas. And he has an interesting conversation with Elizabeth at one point where, was it Elizabeth or was it Mary? I think it was Elizabeth, where I think she had asked him to go and speak to Mary earlier. And he said, my sister died in childbirth delivering a Tudor. My brother was sent to the block for dealing with a Tudor. Like, I'm done with y'all. And when you really think about it, it's true. He did lose his sister. He did lose his brother. And all because of the Tudors in some way, shape, or form. So, he's been, and again, he made his choices. He chose to be disinvolved. He did choose to be the Lord Protector, or to, as soon as Henry was gone, to, sweep Edward up underneath his arm and take that leadership role with him. But, in some ways I do feel like he's a victim. So, watching him get executed was a little difficult. Because overall, through and through, I think he was a good man. I also feel bad for Edward because he, again, is another pawn. He has people in his ear all the time telling him things. A lot of times those things were things that were hard to hear by his own family, to believe that his sisters are scheming against him. I think we have seen him vacillate between I'm the king and I have the absolute authority, but at the same time, these are my sisters and I do care about them. He's also a lonely figure in that everybody around him, he doesn't know if anybody's genuine. Everybody around him has an agenda. And the older he gets, the more he's realizing this. And it's a little hard. I mean, I can imagine it's hard for an adult, but as a child to navigate through all of this. And then to hear that your sisters were also part of the scheming, and those are the people who, if anybody you feel like you may be able to trust, it's them. So he asks to see them, and John Dudley has told him a lot, has put a lot in his ear, and they come in and they try to, at least Mary, tries to embrace him or lean on that brother-sister relationship they have, and he rejects her. She pleads and he tells her that, he cannot stand either of them. He can't stand the sight of either of them, and he kicks them out of his room. So they leave, and, I think Mary is used, Elizabeth seems upset, but Mary's kind of used to this. She's seen all this. She's had her father turn his back on her. And I don't think she's wholly affected. I think she realizes that this is just kind of like part and parcel to what it's like in the court. And she's been banished before, and she'll probably be banished again. She came really close to getting the throne, but it just didn't work out. But I think she's had a lot of moments in her life where she was really close and it didn't work out. So, she might just be used to this. And she also is, a woman of faith. So she will lean on her faith. I think she still feels good about her decision not to leave Spain, to leave England for Spain. So overall, she seems to be frustrated with Elizabeth. And, she goes so far as to tell her she has no love for her. I don't believe that. I think she was just speaking out of anger. But they do come to a little bit of a resolution at the very end when they acknowledge that, all of this is above them and it's kind of out of their hands. And in a sense, that's freeing. And it's because they are women that they don't have to make some of these hard decisions. I mean, they're not in Edward's role because they're women. And that's not a terrible thing. And at the end, they share a moment and they almost giggle and they say, thank God we don't have to deal with that. We think that this is the end of the episode. We go back to Edward, and he is in a meeting with John Dudley, and he coughs up blood. So it is a clear sign that his illness has not gone away. This is not good. And you can see the fear in his face, and you can see the fear in John's face. John just dodged a bullet in a big way, but now we're kind of right back to where we started because he's ill. That's where the episode ends, and that's where the season ends. I thought it was very good. They've been doing a good job with these stories. They're pretty close to the actual history, but again, they also take this creative license. They do a good job of getting in the heads of the characters, so it just gives them a little bit more dimension. They are entertaining. I'm definitely looking forward to season 2. We know, I'm not gonna, no spoiler alert here, but we know something significant is probably going to happen at the beginning of the next season. And that's going to kind of change the tide, and we're going to move in this place where we're really following the story of Elizabeth and her ascension to the throne. But there's a couple of steps in between now and then before we get there. So really good. I'm glad I had the opportunity to watch this and to review this season. And looking forward to your comments and all of this good stuff. And I will be back, I guess, next year to review season 2. Have a good one.